Thank you for joining me, Stardusted Souls. I'm the Oracle of Apollo, Pythia, the Black Oracle. I've been having a lot of visions and communicating with the divine lately. They've been so loving and giving me so much support and bringing me so many messages. And I just recently had a situation which is not something unbeknownst to me, where gods are coming in and giving me messages and I don't even know who they are. So if you want to know about that, check out my other videos as I tell you when I'm meeting different gods. This was regular day. I was going to the Temple of Apollo as I journey there as his oracle. But before I get there are some things that I have to do. I have to go cleanse myself in the sacred waters before I go into his temple. This is through a visualization or through a meditation or through a vision, as whatever form you want to call it. But this is basically just going into space and in between and listening for guidance. So I go ahead and I get to his temple. His temple is this huge, colossal building with beautiful marble stairs and with gold flakes and gold trimmings and very ornate, very well-defined carvings as the columns hold up this beautiful temple. And so I go up the stairs and I begin to make my way into the temple. Let me backtrack. When I get there, I actually am wearing Hermes's wings or Hermes's sandals and Hermes's helmet on my crown, as Hermes also guides me and he lends me or has given me the gift of his crown and a pair of sandals like his that allows me to travel into different dimensions and planes quickly and safely. So I take that off. I take off Hermes' crown. I put it in my satchel that I have to my side. And I go ahead and I make my way up the stairs. And I begin to go down this very long and wide corridor. The corridor, when you go in, has things on the walls. There's statues of different animals. I believe there's a bull as one of them. And different writings. But I make my way down that corridor, and at the rear, there's this big door. So the doors usually open when I get there. And I go through the door, and there's like two doors. There's one on my side, and then if you went on the other side of the temple, there's another door there. So I go through my door, my big door, and that leads me to a courtyard. So in this courtyard, it's basically four walls, like if you were inside, but it has no ceiling. So there's grass out there, and it's a very simple courtyard. There's not much out there besides some flowers and Apollo's statue. So I go out there in my white traditional clothing, and I have gold jewels on, as I do because I am appointed, so it's a position of notoriety, so I am adorned. And I go to his big statue, and all of a sudden I'm about to clean it, because I go to these visions to cleanse these large statues and give my worship. And basically it's like having your altar everywhere you go, instead of just if I'm not home. So what happens is I'm standing there right in front of this beautiful, beautiful marble statue of Apollo, and I begin to split into two beings. So I'm just me, and I begin to split into two beings. And on the right side is me as Pythia in my Grecian clothes, going to take care of my temple duties. And then on the left side, it is like my shadow version of myself. And my shadow self, my lunar side self, she has dreadlocks. She has dreadlocks, and she's dressed very traditional, Indian style. And she also is adorned with traditional jewels. But now I'm looking at my two halves, and from the sky, a large, giant carved Shiva falls into this courtyard. And I'm just looking like, now there's an Indian me, now there's a Shiva, now there's a Grecian me, and now there's an Apollo. So we both simultaneously go to our respective sides, and I begin to cleanse Apollo's marble statue with rose water with a sponge. And I have Hermes sandals on so I can kind of just go up and down as I please. And then my moon side, she's cleaning the Shiva statue, uh, and there's rose water happening there as well. So we clean both of our respective statues and we come down. And then once we're done and complete, we fuse back together. And then now, after we have fused, the Shiva and the Apollo, they begin to fuse themselves, and they just like magnets attracted into one being. And now I'm looking at this new hybrid of Apollo Shiva statue. And I'm just looking at it like, whoa, what is happening? So then, if it couldn't get any more odd, because I'm just like perplexed at seeing these two deities, you know, one of the sun, one of the moon, and different pantheons, of course, merging. I go ahead and I begin my way back up. There's these stairs back up into inside of the building. And before I could even take a couple steps, there's this huge, big, muscular man. And he's just standing there. And I'm just like, whoa, you're so huge. Whoa, you're so muscular. So it wasn't like it was just a very tall, muscular being. He was gargantuan. And I look at him and I didn't recognize him from the visual, although this was a very visual vision that I had. And I recognized him in my clear knowing. I recognized him as Atlas. And I look at him and he just kind of picks me up picks me up like a Q-tip or like a toothpick or like a pen, but he just kind of picks me up like this and he just plucks me on his shoulder, and then he starts walking and you can feel the vibration of the weight of his steps as he's going further. Doom. You can feel a power, you know? And so we get to this little corner where it's still inside the Temple of Apollo. We get to this little area. He sits me down and he brings forth a globe of the earth. It is carved out of some kind of stone. I don't know if this is marble, but it is definitely like a dark gray type stone. A perfectly chiseled earth. And he like kind of not really points, but kind of just like motions with his finger over to like to so that way I can follow his hand to look at a specific spot on the globe. And then the globe turns, and then somewhere kind of like in the center of the globe, but towards the bottom, there's like the end of the landmass that he's showing me. It turns red, and the dot kind of just right there, right on that one spot. And I'm looking at it, and I'm just like, is that India? You know, the clear knowing again just pops in. You know, a lot of times, like, you'll know in the moment, like, you don't really have to second guess because they're telling you. They're just not telling you. And I'm like, oh, like, is that India? That's India. And then he turns to me, giant, you know, I like to call this vision logic, when things that are not in the appropriate proportions, kind of like movie logic, when like you go, oh, that person should have died, that was too heavy, or whatever. But vision logic is kind of like when things are out of proportion, but for whatever reason it works out in the vision anyways. So he comes down to my level, and then he gives me a kiss right on my forehead. And that's it. He gives me his blessing for India, and I'm just like, what is happening in India? I'm not 100% sure yet. I have an inclination is to go see Swami Nityananda, but it's kind of like, why? They never tell you why. They just make you go, and that's okay because I'm used to it. But I'm just like, wow, like Atlas. A lot of people think that he's actually Atlas. If you don't know who he is, he's the guy, you see him like this, and he's holding up the world on his shoulders. That's Atlas. But the misconception here is that Atlas is usually shown holding the world on his shoulders. It's not really the world that he's holding. Atlas, in competition with Zeus, had lost to Zeus. And essentially what wound up happening was because he was the main conspirator against Zeus. Zeus had a particular upset with him. He wound up banning all the other Titans to Tartarus, but except Atlas. Atlas was banned to the most western part of the earth, and what he was told to do was to hold Uranus. So Uranus is the sky, the heavens, the galaxy, Father Sky. So Uranus is the sky, and he's actually holding Uranus so that the heavens and Gaia, Mother Earth, planet Earth, will never meet again. Okay, so he's basically essentially separating them so that the two are divided. And if you start looking back into Greek mythology, Uranus and Gaia, they create the Titans because they do the bow chickie bow bow. But realistically,
Uranus kind of rapes Mother Earth a whole bunch of times, and then she just eventually gets tired of getting pregnant by him, and because he didn't take care of his kids.
So I think it's actually a good way for Atlas to be kind of like birth control. Atlas, he is like the embodiment of endurance, but also daily suffering. So I thought it was very interesting that Atlas would come give me a blessing. If you haven't heard any of my other videos, I talked to you guys about how the angel said that one day outcome of whatever it is that my purpose is in this life is meant to reach 150 countries. So I could see needing a lot of endurance for that. But do you guys know about Atlas or what he does or what he symbolizes? Have you ever worked with Atlas? This is the first time I've actually ever met Atlas in the last 2 years of channeling deities. So it was very interesting to meet him. However, I will say that a lot of the deities that I meet, they have their own sensory sensations that they come with. So you can kind of recognize them by sense. If that makes any sense at all. But essentially, like when I feel things, I visually feel them, and then I can see like a wave, an energetic wave kind of happening just depending on the feeling or sensation that's occurring. And then my body recognizes that as a physiological feeling somewhere depending on what it is. So yeah, so he didn't have, like with Lakshmi, and you watch my video when she surprised me, just gods are just surprising me, just popping into you every day, like you're just doing your ironing. Oh, there's a god. It's just like, what are you doing here? I'm just ironing. That hasn't happened to me yet, but So with Lakshmi, I felt her overwhelming motherly sensation. A lot of people, a lot of you have seen Mother Mary or Jesus, and you feel like all this love and sensations coming out. But with Atlas, it was very stoic. It was just kind of like, it was more visual than it was sensory, as far as me being in his grandeur, in his awe, me being in awe by the magnitude of his presence. And that's something that I can say that when I've met different deities, that doesn't really happen. I never really get in awe of anyone. So it's very interesting to me that that's the way that wound up working out without having any sensory, because I always feel them. But for him particularly, it was just kind of like, here I am, and take me in with your eyes. I am huge. And he was. So what do you think about this? No right or wrong statements. And if you don't get it, that's cool. If you think I'm a liar, that's cool. If you like my story, share yours. Alright guys, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel, because this helps promote this channel. Other people get to hear about this kind of stuff. These types of things happen to a lot of us, and we have to make it more normalized. Alright guys, I hope you go on your path today. In love, light, and wisdom, know thyself. Love thyself, and remember the divine always has your back. Ciao.